Today, I want to talk about struggle, both big and small, because I definitely know people in my inner circle. Well, I include myself actually, and then the concentric circles that move beyond that circle of just people that right now are going through a lot of different things, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, technical, whatever it is. There's just, and it is a challenging time of year. Sometimes it's a time of year where we should be resting the most. And December actually ends up being kind of one of the most bonkers month of the year. So it's totally counterintuitive to our true nature and the cycles of nature. So I think this always creates a little bit of extra tension. So yeah, I want to talk about struggle, big and small, and just how do we move through it? I mean, like anything that I talk about, it's like, how do we be human in this process? And how do we take care of ourselves? And how do we still carry our light through sometimes some of the darkest periods of our lives? So let's see what arises and let's dive in. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, whatever you're doing, I just invite you to take a breath right now and just land in this space together. Because I had a moment the other night when I had just moved through. Actually, I was still in the process. It was a 2.5-day migraine, and I was on day 2 at this point. I hadn't yet gone into the 3rd day. And I had taken myself off to the sea with my daughter to watch the sunset. And it was like a moment of refueling what was my otherwise very, very empty battery, let alone no reserve at this point in time, just a very empty battery. And that felt like it was refueled a bit just because of the beauty of seeing the sea and the waves and, the beautiful sky. And I actually had this really beautiful moment where I put my feet in the water just to ground. It kind of helps with a migraine. And also just to feel the magnetic energy of the earth to recalibrate ourselves. And I opened up my arms and my eyes were closed and I just said, guide me, because I was in a moment of, kind of same story, still not having home and all of that jazz that you've been hearing me talk about this entire year. And I opened my eyes and I saw a dolphin. And I haven't seen a dolphin in these parts before. And it just was a moment of like, right. The beauty of magic, the magic and beauty of nature. And I find actually that I really, really now more than ever, I've always needed nature, but now more than ever, especially because I live in a little bit more of an urban environment and I'm, driving on busy motorways every day. And it's very unlike what I'm used to. The grounding becomes so important to connect to nature, because nature will just immediately bring you into that present moment. And when you have these kind of magical totemic experiences, and I think we really need this. I know I've talked about it a lot, but I think we really, really need this now more than ever, as things become more artificial and more chaotic on the outer world. And obviously we feel that in our inner world. Those moments are so important. So I finally had my battery kind of refueled and I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this. I can do this life, It's like just an hour or an hour and a half of that, however long it was, not even, it was exactly what I needed. And then I came back home and by this time it was dark and had to found parking. And then I went to lock my door and it locked, unlocked. And I pressed it again, locked, unlocked. And I was like, shit, my car is not locking. And I was like, this is just not what I need right now. It's really, really not what I need right now. With a migraine, having just had this peaceful experience that kind of brought me back to center. Anyway, long story short, it took about 15 minutes to troubleshoot and do all of these things. And then this was working, but that wasn't working. And then, so there's obviously a problem with the electrics, which it hasn't done since then or before then. So I do think there is some wacky stuff in the air right now. Mercury retrograde, some solar flares, just some, craziness in general. But what it triggered in me was this, like, I cannot take another thing on my plate. And it's a little thing, but I think with struggle, and I'm going to talk about big struggle and small struggle, but right now I'm starting with small struggle, it's all the small struggles that accumulate to create a pile. And you feel that you literally can't take anything more. Like you're going to break under the pressure. And so I had a moment where I looked up to the sky and I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like F you, F you. And I'll talk about my reflection on what happened in that moment in just a moment. But it was really like, it brought me into this existential, like, I can't take this anymore. I don't want to be here. I want to go back home, which is not on this planet. It just brought me into this, what is going on with this world? What is happening on this planet right now? And it just seems like it's not getting better. And I know so many people that are struggling, and some are really struggling on big levels. And there are some people that are really unwell, and some people that are dying, and some people that have died, and some people whose pets are dying or have died or will die. It's just like really, really intense times. And again, the accumulation, life is life and it goes up and down, and, death is a part of life and all these things, but there's been an unrelenting energy these last 5 years, unrelenting, time is speeding up. Things are just, especially with technology and just the amount of stimulation through social media and, AI, all of these things is just faster and faster. And I do think time is actually really speeding up, but there's so much going on. And then when you see so much fear being injected into society again and again and again and again, it's just, it really is unrelenting. There's one thing after the next, whereas it used to be a bit more spread out, right? Every 5 to 10 years or 15, whatever. And now it's like every couple months, right? There's always something. There's always some kind of drama. And that's a choice too. It's like I've talked about that of like, do we focus on the fear and the catastrophe, or do we focus on really being the change that we want to see in the world? Not by being ignorant, but also knowing that where we choose to place our focus is where energy flows. And we are incredibly powerful when it comes to that, right? Where you hold your intention and what you focus on and the embodiment that you have. But there's been this unrelenting nature. And so I found myself in this existential, like, what the hell is going on this planet? Like, why? Why do we have to suffer so much? Like, how is this benefiting our evolutionary growth at this point in time? Because some of the conversations that have come out of this that I've had with friends is, I found myself the other day being like, I'm really bored, actually. I'm really bored of this same record playing, another war, another, something that is dividing people. And I do come from the perspective, and you may agree or disagree, I do believe that it's highly manipulated, and there's a whole orchestration, right? The puppeteers. And I do think that the only thing that's going to change this is when we, the people, say, you know what? No, thank you. Not playing that game anymore. And we come into our sovereignty, and we don't hand over our authority to people and organizations. But that's just my perspective. And I'll leave it at that for now. But really, like, if I zoom out and I look at this from a perspective of just consciousness, having this experience of like life on planet Earth, human beings, all of the things, right? I know for some people, it might feel too abstract when you talk about this as a simulation, but whatever you want to call it, a simulation, an experience, an experiment, a bit of a Truman Show, whatever it is, what I found myself in was just this like loop of like, man, there always just feels like there's something, and it's around struggle and suffering. And there are moments of beauty and bliss and joy and inspiration, but then it pretty quickly comes back around to some kind of struggle, challenge, and suffering. And I kind of was like, what the hell? What, like, just really? Like, we're still doing this, both on micro and macro, individual and collective levels. Like, we're still doing this. And I found myself just feeling bored. Like, okay, if this were a game that we were playing or a film that we were watching, at some point you'd say, you know what? I'm kind of tired of this. Let's try something else. And I kind of feel like that's where we're at and where we've been at, and yet it's not changing. I almost feel like there's this glitch where the record player is kind of like did it is playing the same part of the song. And you're like, okay, move on. And then my realization, I had a personal one and a collective one. So I'll do the collective one first. A reflection that I had was, well, when we are coming out of a pattern, and it's almost like the same, I would use the analogy of a detox. When we're about to let go of something, it intensifies. It gets louder. It's in the octave, it's the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si before the next do, where it's like the energy really comes to a culmination and you feel like you can't take it anymore. And then there's the release, where it's like the biggest wave of the 7 sets of waves before the next new one comes in that's smaller. So there's this amplification, there's this intensification. When you detox, you feel worse before you feel better. And this idea that sometimes things have to get so loud. Actually, I was listening to somebody talk about this when it comes to duality, that there's always been duality, but we are really, really being shown duality on a big scale right now. Like it's very loud in your face. And it's getting so loud so that we finally make the choice to not do that anymore. So I thought the same thing with suffering and with challenge and with struggle. It's like almost is being purged up. It's been pushed up to the surface for us to then say, you know what? No more. I don't want to play this game anymore. I don't want to do struggle anymore. I don't want to do suffering anymore. I don't want to do any of that anymore, because it's actually getting to the point where maybe we have been evolving through that. Because there's a lot like in the spiritual world that you can say, your darkest night of the soul is what then, brings you into a whole new evolution of who you are. And I fully agree with that. But I do also think that once we've kind of learned the lesson, we can move on. And so on a collective level, it's like, okay, I think we've played this suffering struggle game card enough. And can we really see it for what it is and really choose, you know what, I don't want to be the victim anymore. I don't want to be the martyr anymore. And then really consciously make the choice of like, I let it go. I don't want to go into that. So on a personal level, I didn't catch this in the moment. In the moment, I was very reactive. I was really I was pissed off, and it triggered so many other things and the existential stuff. And it's the accumulation. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back, and just the pressure that's on me, all the responsibility that is on my shoulders alone. And not having home for a year is very stressful after a while. It's just exhausting because you can't put down roots. So I didn't notice it in the moment. The moment I was very triggered and I was very reactive. But one thing I have noticed is I come back to center much quicker. I come back into a state of like, okay, let it go. But I have my moment of reactive time, and I want to just say, you know what? That's okay. It's okay. And for some of us, we might be more passionate and we might be more fiery. And so you might have that like surge of energy come up, whether it's anger or frustration or whatever it is. Sometimes you literally feel your blood boil. It's okay. Just like give it space, allow it to come up, as long as you're not hurting anyone, as I've talked about in the past. But after I thought, maybe I think this was the next day, I was thinking, I've really learned over the last 2 decades with all of the work that I do around emotional, our inner landscape and our emotional palette, and human interrelatedness and connection, especially working around relationship a lot with singles and, dating and the whole texting and online dating and all this stuff. I've really learned not to take things personal. So when it comes to human interaction and when it comes to emotions and all of these things, I've learned, don't take it personal. What if you were to begin with not taking it personal? But I had this aha moment of like, oh, but Corinne, when something goes wrong, like with the car or with the dishwasher or with the computer or with whatever it is, I take it super personal, but I take it personal with the universe. It's not with a person. I mean, sometimes it might be of like, how badly people park. And I'm like, we live in a society. Why can't you just be more mindful? And why can't you just care more? Or like the people that just ding your car, run into your car and don't leave you a note, which happened to me a couple weeks ago. I have those moments, but actually my beef always is with the universe. And it becomes this existential, like, I don't want to be here. And one day I will share like remembering being in utero and remembering being born and that whole thing, because sometimes I think that plays into, coming into this realm, knowing already what it was going to be. But of course, when times get hard, we want to blame someone, right? And of course, at the end of the day, we have to take self-responsibility, and we are in control of our reaction. We're not in control of what happens around us, but we are definitely in control of our reaction. But I recognize what was creating more suffering for me is I was taking it personal, kind of like an FU to the universe or whoever's up there, God or source, or, sometimes I'm like shouting at my guides or my angels because I'm like, where the hell are you? Where are you right now? You're not here, and you're letting you come down here next time. Like, you're letting me down. You have this experience, and I get into this whole argument with the unseen. So I was like, okay, well, what if I didn't take those moments so personal? Like, yeah, it's the whole like, well, shit happens. Sometimes it happens a little too frequently and you're like, really? And what I'm seeing right now, which this is the part where I think it's getting so loud, maybe because I'm hoping that it's because we're going to get to the point of like, you know what, we're just not going to play that anymore, because there's some people in my immediate circle or my, very close circle that are just, it's like literally one thing after the next, and what they're having to go through. It's just like any one of those things would be enough. And then you bring like 5, 6, 7 of those things together and you just think that's actually too much for one human being. It's just too much. So there's no doubt in my mind that we're being seriously tested right now. And when I say tested, it's not because it's not a form of punishment. I don't think any of this is ever punishment. I think there's always a point of reflection. There's always growth that can be had. There's always something to learn. Some people hate that. I've had clients that are like, get angry at me. But again, it's not with the connotation of like school. I think we're so indoctrinated to think like a lesson and you're being graded and you're either going to pass or fail, or you're going to be, praise or punishment. It's not that. This is your soul evolving. And challenge and struggle, if we look at it in a particular way and take it on in a particular way, will make you grow and expand. It just will. It will make you evolve. So that's what I mean by the word lesson. It's not a school like the headmaster is going to give you a beating if you don't get it right, or they're punishing you. It's out of the paradigm of praise and punishment, good and bad, right and wrong. It's more like, what is this experience showing me, right? So I think we're definitely being shown a lot, but I do have moments where I think it's all just getting to the point where it feels a little bit pointless. And, a friend of mine was just sharing, she just found herself really in the monotony of just routine and being like, God, this is such a waste of matter. Like, if this is like, we're looking at it from like a point of creation and, creativity of consciousness and matter. She was like, just feels like such a waste of matter. And it made me laugh because I'm like, oh God, that's exactly how I feel. And it kind of feels like that's when all of this stuff keeps on loop and it keeps on repeating itself. I do find myself going, what is the point of this? What is the point? Because really where I would love for us all to be, it's not about like Shangri-La, like everything is fine, but it's about, I'm just ready for us to live in a state of, we get to grow through bliss. We get to grow through joy. We get to grow through collaboration and the feeling of harmony between everyone. Because last week I went in and did a workshop at my daughter's school around emotions, and I hadn't done group work in a while. And it was so fulfilling to work with children, because I work with a lot of people's inner child. So to work with children directly is just so it's so amazing. And I really felt so grateful for it. And I came out of it feeling so alive and grateful and happy and in my purpose, and how expansive I felt, and just really like on a high, right? And I'm like, that's what I want for us all. That's what I want for humanity. Not to have to like day in and day out, like we have to, live, like work to live, right? Like to pay bills, and, just crap is so expensive right now. And just everything is requiring so much energy. And I won't even go into all of it, but it's just what I want for us is that feeling of like, wow, what a beautiful, incredible experience this is to be human on this planet. And look at how beautiful the planet is. And look at how beautiful people can be. And just, I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that game, right? I'm ready for that phase. And I think we can head there, but it's just this part just feels like, God, when are we going to get through it? So the big struggle is, there are some people that are going through mega stuff, right? They're either going through illness, or they're going through, chronic injury, or losing a loved one, or losing a pet, or their whole life being reoriented around, a different job, or not having a job, or getting divorced, or whatever their struggle might be of having been single for a long time and really wanting that, or home, not having a home. Just the big things that affect us on a daily, on a more profound daily level, right? They're not the little niggly struggles that just add up and, blow your top and really drive you crazy and exasperate and fatigue you. But the big ones that really get you to the heart and soul of things. And I think these ones are a real quote unquote test of surrender and epic trust and faith, and really looking at it almost from a soul perspective. I know I've spoken about this in previous episodes of like, what if we were to have just profound trust and faith? And what I'm learning about these moments as I witness them in people that I know, and, sometimes their family members or friends, is that what I intuit, like what I pick up from it, is really what we're being asked to come into, and I've felt this very much in my personal life, and I know I've shared this, is present moment. Come into the now, come into the now, come into the now. Because there's nothing like illness or injury or pain or suffering on that level, or, if someone's dying, or either a person or an animal has just died, there is nothing like that to bring you into the now. The mind might reflect upon the past and past memories. It might project into the future of how am I going to do the future without this, or in this, or whatever it is. But actually, it is profoundly about the now. And I read a post by someone on Instagram. I don't remember the name of the account because it wasn't a name of a person. And they said something just around how, if you want to use the terminology of ascension, we're not moving through this ascension with the ego. There's nothing that you can do to make it better, to make it faster. If anything, I would say what slows it down is coming from the ego, and is really coming from the ego and the mind that wants to control. That's the way that we've been living and what we're moving through. And I think why the struggle is getting so big is because it's teaching us, it's actually wanting us, it's inviting us to say, let go. Let go, soften the grip, surrender. And surrender comes hand in hand with trust. Surrender and trust that you're being guided, that your soul is driving you. You don't need to drive this. But we've become a culture and society obsessed with control, because control comes out of fear. Right. And also it's just kind of been indoctrinated into us of, it's the left brain, it's the linear, it's the well, I say the masculine, but a very unhealthy version of the masculine. It's the loss of the feminine. It's the loss of the right brain. It's the loss of intuition. It's the loss of our capacity to be telepathic and intuitive and psychic, which we have all of these innate abilities. They're just dormant. And so we've been on hyper linear masculine, left brain, need to know it all, hyperdrive, right? And so what is the best way to bring us into surrender is you're going to be, thrown for a loop. You're going to get a ball out of left field, and you're going to be forced to be in the present now. And you're going to be forced. Well, you're not going to be forced. You're going to have a choice. And the choice often is either you try to control it and you create more suffering for yourself, or as scary as it seems, you let go, you surrender, and you trust, and you allow how it's going to unfold, because your soul already has a way for you. It just does. So how do we allow, we are just the vessel, we are the vehicle, we are the car. You don't have to make the car drive. Your soul will be the driver. Your higher self will be the driver. And so I think this is such a huge recalibration that it's almost hard to wrap our logical mind around it. But what I invite myself to do this as well. And what I notice for me, it's like, I don't know how to even put it into words because I feel it. So if you know my work, you know that I will often invite you, cue you, ask you, go into your body. What does that feel like? So when you're trying to control something and when you're in the egoic mind, even if it's like, I need to do this practice and this yogic practice and this breath work and this and this and this and this so I can ascend. What if you just firstly feel what that feels like? Notice if there's any tension. Notice if there's any anxiety. Notice if there's just effort, a lot of effort. And then notice what it feels when you drop out of the mind and into the body, and your heart, and your just one breath into your heart is the fastest way to change your frequency and your energy. And when you come into the heart and you've learned to frequent your heart, to drop into that place more often, you'll feel there's an energy of lightness, of warmth, of softness, of expansion. And that's the energy that we want to be embodying more. You don't know. It's not logical. It's not rational. But here's the thing. When I say you don't know in the controlled way that we think we know, right? We plan, I'm going to have this, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that next. And the funny thing is that often our plans don't actually pan out, right? That's the big irony, and that's the big cosmic joke. How do you make God laugh? You tell him your plans. But the thing is when you land in that expansive place, and softening is the most beautiful word that for me just feels like it fits that feeling the most. It's like soften, soften, soften. Normally we're so hard, we're so tense. And in the softening, the knowing comes, but it comes in a different way. It doesn't come through the mind, it comes through the field. You feel it, you sense it, you intuit it. But it's a feeling that literally just comes into your space. And it comes in with such a greater ease because it's not something that you have to figure out. It's not something that you have to compute and that there's a formula and you have to figure it out. It just arrives. And I think, all of our senses are expanding as well, because it's not just about, I see this and there's the pinpoint narrow vision, right? It's really you're seeing by absorbing. Absorbing, I think, is the best word. You're absorbing information. It reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen this video come across somewhere online where it's this Asian boy that's in a large class. They're all reading, and he's just flipping each page and he's scooping it up, like energetically scooping up as if you could scoop up the words, and he's putting it into his head and like bathing his head. And then he turns the page and he scoops it up energetically and he puts it into his head. And I just love that because it's like this, he's energetically collecting the information, putting it into his mind and flowing it down over his head and his face as if he's absorbing the information energetically. And I just thought, wow, that's a perfect metaphor for how we're changing from reading word to word to word to word to word, sentence to paragraph to paragraph. That's linear form, right? That's time. Rather than we're going into the quantum and we're going into the field, and you just You pick up the information like that, because that's actually how our body and our intuition works. You walk into a space, and if you're attuned, you can feel and read the room instantaneously. Then the mind picks up all of the information and you go, oh, that's why I was feeling that way. Oh, it's because of this. And often I really like the thought of your very first, most immediate thought before you even think is your intuition. And everything after that is your mind trying to logically figure something out. And if you go back, you'll often find that it's like, oh, that first feeling, that first intuition, that first thought was your intuition and was actually the correct one. You know, majority of the time. I don't know if I've ever had it not work that way, because even if you go, oh, well, but I fell in love with that guy and I shouldn't. My first thought was like, oh, but I loved him and I had a good feeling. Actually, back up to a sliver of a moment right before that. You always knew. You always knew. I've really seen that across the board. So it's just that we're often not aware of it. And so all of this work is to become more aware, right? And the more aware we are, we pick up every little tiny detail from, most especially from the perspective of energy and feeling and emotion. And then, of course, it's learning how to decode that, you could say sometimes. So reining it back in. Can see that the sun is going down and I want to get my face in it just before it leaves. So I'm gonna wrap it up. Have it be a bit of a shorter one today. Whatever you're dealing with, the small struggle or the big struggle, the invitation is be here now with it. Have the feelings. Have the feelings. They're gonna be feelings. You're human. It's okay to feel. But how can it be an invitation to bring you into the present moment? How can it be an invitation to show you what are you still holding on to? What story are you holding on to? What belief are you holding on to? So for me, it's like, oh, I'm taking this shit very personal. And I'm angry at and disappointed in life and all of these things. This is not how I thought it was going to pan out. Okay, I'm looking at my beliefs. I'm looking at my expectations. I'm looking at my disappointments. Okay, be with that, Corinne. Feel that, Corinne. What do I want to let go of? What story, narrative, belief do I want to let go of? I know I talk about this a lot, but it's like, welcome to life and being human. It's going to come around many, many times. And we're now in the great purge, you could say. Then how does it change if you don't take it personal? How does it change once you've allowed yourself to feel and express the emotion and then you come back to center? And when you don't take it personal and when you're not in reaction mode, how do you see it differently? What does it reveal to you? What do you learn from it? And the more you do this, I think, my mom reflected this back to me and I really feel it actually. She's like, what I've noticed is that you have a lot on your plate and you've moved through a lot and it's taken an incredible amount of stamina and resilience and courage. But she's like, what I've noticed is that you come back much faster. It's almost like the resilience in that is much quicker and that there's like more of a lightness to it. And the word that she uses it's like I'm trusting my feminine more. I'm trusting my feminine more. And you know what? Actually, I really want to leave you very quickly a dream that I had because it has a big metaphor around this about feminine, masculine. But I'm going to go put my face in the sun before it disappears and then I'm going to come back. I'm most definitely a sun child. So this might be more relatable to women, but men, I'm sure there's your own version of it. But I believe it was from the book Women Who Run with Wolves, where she talks about, Clarissa Pinkolas Estes, I think is her name. She talks about kind of this reoccurring dream that women have that often is about a man chasing them. And it might be trying to get into their home. It often has to do with home and a man from the outside, and it's dark and there's some kind of either invasion or chasing or trying to be caught, or you'd often wake up and you're obviously scared. Sometimes in the dream, you might fight the man off. There's a whole metaphor for what that actually means. But what was really interesting is I had a dream that I was driving in the car with my daughter, and it was dark, and there were these two men that were chasing me, and I was having to drive up this really, really steep hill. Like I had to bring it into first gear and almost like push my body forward, like if you were like rowing a boat to try and like, come on, you can get it up. I think I can, because it was that steep. But what was so fascinating is I wasn't scared at all. Like normally these kind of dreams, there's a fear, there's a panic. There's the imminent danger. And I was really relaxed, and my daughter was just asking me questions about something. And I was like, I was just answering her. And then I said, oh, hold on a second, sweetie. Like I've got to go down to first gear, and we've got to push this car up. And so I was very relaxed, and we get over the lip of the mountain, or the steep hill. And then we're kind of coming down this bumpy way, and I'm like laughing, and I'm like, okay, I can get back to your question now. And I can answer your question. Obviously left the men behind. My mom was like, wow, that is such a significant dream. And it was, the way she kind of worded it is like, oh, you're really trusting. Probably it's a combination of both, but the inner feminine, because my feminine wasn't afraid, and I think very much what I've built this last year is a very strong masculine container, because for one, I've had to be everything. I've had to be the woman and the man, the masculine and the feminine. I've had to take care of everything. And not being in partnership and not having someone to do it with, and being a single mother, there's a lot, suffice it to say, like for me to carry and to hold. And, I have my moments where I'm like, F it all. This is too much. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to do it alone anymore. I want, as a friend of mine said, a problem shared is a problem halved. And I'm like, yeah, no, I got the whole problem. I got the whole problem. I mean, I have amazing, sisters, soul sisters in my life, and my mom. But, I've had to really, really draw on my inner strength and resilience and create safety within myself. And this year has definitely been a year of letting go of fear and anxiety, and really coming into epic trust and faith and surrender and all of these things. And this dream feels like, okay, yeah, that's really the culmination, this it symbolizes what I've gone through, where even though the climb is still steep, my friends, it's still steep. Like I still, at times my nervous system is like, I can't take this anymore. I can't take not having a home. And do I have to start all over again and move to a completely different country or area? And, why is the home not coming through? And everything that goes, it's the cost of living is I need to be making a lot more money. Like all of these just daily survival things, right? Which you kind of would like to be doing in partnership, so that it doesn't all fall on your own shoulders. But I can really see how I've, even though it's a steep climb, this dream is very metaphoric for like, yeah, you're okay, you're even laughing and you're relaxed, and you even have the the ability to answer a child's question. Which, for me is always like when I'm driving, if I'm having to do some kind of maneuver, I always have to tell my daughter, not right now. I can't take any questions right now, not until I'm done. I need to concentrate. So the fact that I was multitasking and I was relaxed and I was kind of not scared, and I was almost, laughing by the end of it in this really kind of optimistic, like, yay, we did it, right? Is very metaphoric. And so I think, when we're going through these times, that it's just stretching us all, whether it's a small struggle or a big struggle, it doesn't matter. It's stretching us all. And it's going to bring up a lot of our human parts, right? It's going to bring up our fear and our anxiety and our overwhelm. And it might even bring up existential stuff of what am I doing here, and what is this, and what's the point, and where are we going, and what happens after. And there's a lot, as the veil is thinning, a lot is coming up. And just, like when I tune into my heart says, just be here. And just be here with love. And be here with gentleness. And be here with compassion. And be so, oh, so very soft. It's just like I feel this tremendous amount of love that's pouring through my heart right now. And I want to like extend it to you and pour it into you and pour it into every cell of your being. And for you to know that you are loved and that you are love and that you are taken care of and that your soul is right over you, watching you, guiding you. And your angels and your guides, if you believe in them or not, they're there and they're around you and they're holding you and they're loving you. And there's so much light. Like what's amazing is that whenever I tune in and I go into my third eye and I go into my crown chakra and I go up into higher realms, immediately I see so much light, like incredible light. And for me, it's a good reminder that when we get so bogged down into the challenges and the struggles and the pains and the suffering, on every level, minor and major, it's such an important thing to remember that like we can get so weighed down and bogged down, and the fear can grip us, and the sadness can grip us, and the depression can grip us, and the boredom can grip us. But actually to remember there's so much light even in the darkness. That light is inextinguishable, and it is always around you. And if you want to get to know it more, close your eyes and be still and be quiet and tune into your heart. Quiet down your mind. Like slow down the hamster wheel. Come into your body, breathe into your heart. And you can close your eyes and look up towards the top of your head, look up to your third eye and look up to your crown and notice if the light comes in. Because we all can access it, Some of us might practice it more, so we have faster access, but we can all access it. So know that the light is there. And the reason why the light is there is because you are the light. And the reason why love is there is because you are love. So it's just tuning into you. You don't even need to go to guides and angels and source and God and all of these things. You just go directly to you, but to who you truly are. And I think this is what this is all about. Like, I think the game is coming to an end as we have known it. And a new game, a new experience begins when we learn to let go of the fear and the control and the anxiety. But the thing is in order to let go of it, you have to move through it. You have to accept it. You have to embrace it, and you have to love it. There's no circumventing. And actually, if you want to ascend, you have to descend first. You have to deal with your shadow, and you have to be so rooted in this dimension so that you are so grounded and solid. You are on both feet and you've got strong legs. Then you fly. If you're running from something, and this is one last thing I'm going to say, is the struggle, if it's coming up through physical injury or through illness, pay attention to where that physical illness or injury is in your body and what is it telling you, because our body is constantly communicating. If it's in your stomach, what can't you stomach? What have you not been digesting in your life? If it's in your ankle, how am I not standing on my own 2 feet? If it's in my spine, in what way do I not feel supported? Right? Look at the symbolism of what part of your body and even the illness, everything is communication. There's no praise or punishment. There's only learning, discovering, listening, evolving, healing, so that we can evolve, whether it's in this lifetime or the next. So trust yourself, trust your body, trust your soul, trust your wisdom, trust your inner knowing, trust your heart. Trust that you are light and that you are love. That's all I'm going to leave you with today. Just be in that energy and get to know it more. And just, I think if we all just sat in that and boomed it out, wow, what a tidal wave of just the most extraordinarily beautiful energy, that we would send across the cosmos. So I'll leave it with that epic vision. And as always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.